Welcome to Does the Team Think? And now here's your chairman, McDonald Hobley.
And in this program, you'll hear a variety of answers to a variety of questions put by a variety of people. So let's meet the people who'll be doing most of the answering. We have Richard Murdock, Tommy Trinder, Ted Ray, and the man who dreamed it all up, Professor Jimmy Edwards. And sitting next to me is Mrs. I.M. Ditton. Hello, Mrs. Ditton. Can we hear your question, please?
Do the members of the team think they'd have liked to have lived in the Wild West as depicted in films?
Do the members of the team think they would like to have lived in the Wild West as depicted in films?
Well, as a matter of fact, I have always been very interested in the Wild West. And when I was very, very young, my first recollection of the cinema screen, as far as it concerned the Wild West, was a man named William S. Hart. William S. Hart had a gimmick, even in those days of the silent films, when he used to almost close his eyes and glare at his enemies, you see. And I thought, this is great. And I came home and tried it on my mother. And the next day, she took me to the eye hospital.
Ever since then, you've never been able to see very well, have you?
All right, Tommy Trinder.
Well, Mrs. Ditton, it might interest you to know that I have been in a cowboy film.
Oh, sorry.
What part did you play?
I played a cowboy.
You played the back legs?
No, I did not. I was picked for the part because I was the only artist that could hold top C at a trot. And I went to Australia, and for 5.5 months I lived out in the bush like a cowboy. I dressed like a
It's
cowboy.
an extraordinary country, Australia. They've only got one bush.
And if you were behind it, there'd be standing room only.
Well, you never know where to go. There's only one bush. Anyway,
Richard Murdock.
Richard Murdock.
I'd love to be in one of those Western films, you know, those lovely... Well, for the first 3/4 of it, because towards the end the shooting starts.
And they never reload, do they? Have you noticed that? Those guns, they've got 100 bullets in those guns.
Well, that's what the
That's right,
that's what
sir,
the
yeah.
commercials are for, so they can reload. The
Jimmy
whole point
Edwards.
of this thing is that I would like to have lived in those days, provided I could have read the script first. I want to be one of the ones that survives. So many of them don't in those films. If I were the sheriff or the good man, yes, but I'd hate to be the bad man and have to do all that clutching of my stomach
So
and
you want
ride.
to be a good man and play character parts?
Mrs. Ditton.
Blimey, that died, didn't it?
Jimmy Edwards would be the only sheriff in the world to ride side saddle.
And then I'd have 4 rosy cheeks. I know. You've often said that.
Mrs. Ditton, if you lived in those days, what character would you like to play?
I can tell the team what I think they would have been.
Oh, do, yes.
Well, I think Jimmy Edwards would have been one of these travelling professors that go around with a little cart and the elixir of youth.
And I'd have been the fellow they swept up.
Mrs. Ditton's got the floor.
Ted Ray would definitely have been a country parson.
Dearly beloved, we are gathered together.
Now, what about Tommy, Mrs. Ditton?
Undertaker.
You see, I become the hero. I get him in the end.
Very good, Tom.
All right, Mrs. Ditton. What about Dickie Murdock, Mrs. Ditton?
Well, he presents a bit of a problem.
Doesn't he?
Well, he would have made a bartender or a Mississippi riverboat gambler.
That's what I thought. Team, do any of you think that you'd be quick on the draw?
Well, I'm frankly quick on the draw. I've been drawing money out every week myself.
I'm very quick on the draw. I get 1 out of 8 on the pools.
Tommy.
Draws don't appeal to me.
I wonder if any of the team have had the experience I had, because I had a
Shouldn't think so.
a schoolboy... Why, does it show? I had a childhood hero, a fellow named Tom Mix.
Oh, so did
I
I.
thought you were going to say Tommy Trinder for a minute.
Tommy, you've always been my hero.
No, this...
He was very quick on the draw. He was what they call the ready mix, wasn't he?
Ready mix. Well, that's good, Jim. No, but I admire this fellow, and I never dreamed, in my wildest dreams did I ever dream I'd meet this man. And I did honestly play on the bill with him at the Finsbury Park Empire. And there was my hero, many years later, mind you, sitting on the side of the stage. And I went up and I said, Mr. Mix. It sounded ridiculous. Mr. Mix, I said, you are my hero ever since I was a kid. And he looked at me and I thought he was going to give me a little pat on the head. you know. And he said, that's all. That was a lot.
What was that other famous? Was it Billy the Buffalo Kid, or what was it called? Buffalo Bill. Now, never in my wildest dreams did I ever think that I'd ever have the privilege of meeting him. And I never did.
Thank you, team, and thank you very much indeed, Mrs. Ditton. Thank you very much. And now, team, it's Mr. Philip Whiteley. Hello, Mr. Whiteley. What's your question, please?
What are the team's favourite names of English towns and villages?
What are the team's favourite names of English towns and villages?
Places.
That's your name for them, places.
Well, they are places, aren't they?
You can't call everywhere places. Where were you last week? Places. Where are you going next week? I'm going places.
He means places like Compton Ponsford.
Yes,
That's right.
Or Chipping Sodbury. I love that
That's what I'm doing on the golf course. Very bad.
It's a lovely little old place down somewhere near where you're working.
Hinton Charterhouse.
Tommy, there's a place called Pluck's Gutter.
one. There's a place called Little Piddling.
But the funny thing is that these places are not always pronounced as they're written. Pluck's Gutter is actually pronounced Platter, you see.
Is that right?
Yeah. So where are you going tonight? I'm going to Platter.
I hope she likes it. You will throw these feed lines at me.
Well, I can see you're hungry.
I was in the northeast of England a little while ago.
Oh, yeah.
Chesterley Street, Heckley Hole, Haltley Springs, but the one I love, Pity Me.
That's the one I want to talk about.
What,
Now, how about that? There is a village in Durham, or Northumberland, I won't be sure about this, and it's called Pity Me. Now, honestly, folks, how sad can you get? Can you imagine living in a village and somebody says, where'd you come from? And he says, Pity Me. So you buy 3 of his pencils and he's out of work again.
What about Nether Wallop, Little Wallop, and...
Oh, the Wallops.
Yes, the Wallop.
Now you're on Jimmy's country now, the Wallop. The Wallop man himself.
Dickie Murdock.
While these other chaps have been sort of waffling around, I've got one or two.
Oh, have us? Yeah, have we?
Old Marsh in Bleasdale.
Eh?
In Lancashire.
What's it called?
Barley with Wheatley Booth.
You're joking, of course.
I've
Dickie?
been to Cridling Stabs in Yorkshire. There's Barton in the Beans in Leicestershire.
Really? Poor old Bart.
There's a
Barney in the
place in
Marsh?
Cornwall called Stib.
There's a place in Cornwall called Lube, and I never go in there.
You know, it's an extraordinary thing. You only have to say something rude and you get a big laugh.
Right, team, just let's give you a rest for a moment. Let's find out from Mr. Philip Whiteley whether he has any particular names of towns and villages that he particularly likes. Have you, Mr. Whiteley?
Yes, well, my favourite, I think, is called Broadbottom.
We're always getting back to Jimmy Edwards, aren't we? Always.
But there are some very fascinating names
Yes.
around the world, not only in England, if we might enlarge the...
But
for
do.
example, in Canada, for example, I was stationed at a place called Swift Current, and there's a place called
yes.
Medicine Hat
Yes.
in
You've
Manitoba.
got a good band round that, haven't you?
Well, Australia.
And do you know that in New Zealand there's actually a town called Waikikamuka?
Why should you kick a mook?
Well, I mean, the R.S.P.C.A. should move in.
There's Oamaru, Timaru, and Waipakarugga.
Where's that?
Best half back line.
Zealand.
Oh, is it?
And that's a good half back line.
What
There's
about
a place
Lake...
in Yorkshire, keeping it to England for the moment, Britain rather. There's a place in Yorkshire called Steeple Bumpstead on the Wold near Giggleswick, Yorks. Isn't that gorgeous? I'll tell you about a friend of mine.
Oh,
who
yeah.
was driving his car, and this chap said to him, now, you want to be very careful, he said, because the police are very hot round here. And he didn't take any notice. He went through a village, and this chap said, what was it, that village we passed? And he said, a place called Goslow. And the next morning, when he faced the magistrate, he realised it was Go Slow.
Thank you, team, very much, and thank you very much, Mr. Whiteley.
Whiteley.
Thank you, Mr. Whiteley. Now, sitting next to me is a very attractive young lady who answers to the name of Julie Robinson. Hello, Julie. What's your question, please?
Have any of the team ever been hypnotised? And if not, would they like to be?
Has any of the team ever been hypnotized, and if not, would they like to be?
Julie, if you'd have phrased your question, have the team ever been under the influence? You'd have got much more sensible answers than the ones you're going to get.
What I liked was the way Julie rolled her eyes to heaven after she'd asked the question. She doesn't know what she'd let herself in for, do you? How old are you, Julie?
10.
10?
You want to be 11, darling? I wouldn't dare crack that. Isn't she lovely? My God, I wish I was 12. I was 12 once.
It's a long time ago.
Julie, have you ever been hypnotised?
Well, I haven't been hypnotised, but I don't think I'd like to be because, well, I might do something I didn't like.
You say you haven't been hypnotised?
No.
No, well, see, that's unfortunately one of these simple questions where the answer, as far as I'm concerned, is just both in the negative, and that's the end of it. I haven't and I don't want to be.
But has anyone ever tried to hypnotise you, Jim? A professional hypnotist. I've had this experience.
No, I never have. No,
Well-
I wouldn't allow him to try because I know he'd succeed.
Ted, do tell us about your
Yes,
experience.
well, I can't mention the fellow's name because this was a most unfortunate situation. This fellow was, many years ago, a hypnotist on the BBC. And there were several of us there, and obviously he chose his subject very carefully, but he didn't bother with me. He didn't give me any instructions.
I didn't choose mine very carefully at Cambridge, but that's another matter.
Well, you majored in boozing?
My-
This fellow came along, and he said to me, he threw a few questions at me very quickly, you see, twice 1, 2, twice 2, 4, twice, and so on and so on. And then he said, think of a number between 5 and 12. And deliberately, I said 8, when nearly everyone says 7. He said, think of a colour, and most people say red or blue, and I said yellow. And I saw this fellow's eyes flicker,
He finished up, you hypnotised him.
I spoiled his concentration and ruined the fellow's act.
Yeah, but
I didn't mean to, but I was just being obstructive.
I've seen this fellow, I'm probably the same fellow you're talking about, do an act at a holiday camp where he not only hypnotised a great many people in the audience, but late at night he was constantly being dragged out of his chalet to unhypnotise people.
Really?
Oh, well, that kind of thing happens in holiday camps.
Well, you don't have to unhypnotise them, you just pry them apart, don't you?
I would...
When they're kissing each other so vociferously. As Jimmy says, these fellows, they can do it, there's no doubt about that. They pick their victims, very carefully, and they just snap their fingers and they go under. They really do.
You've got to be a weak vessel, then.
Tommy.
Now, I can give you an example.
Have you ever been hypnotised?
Well, a man tried to hypnotise me, and there were 4 of us seated in a line, and he's working on me and says, watch that closely. And a girl sitting next to me went right out, and he wasn't hypnotising her. She got a ricochet off me.
And he was a cockeyed hypnotist.
Did she put her hand up before she went out?
Julie Robinson, supposing you were a hypnotist, how would you set about hypnotising Jimmy Edwards? Now, what would you do? Would you look at him? Would you dangle sort of watches at him, or what?
Well, first of all,
You clear your throat.
I'd say, do you trust me?
Sweet. Very sweet.
And then, I'd say,
Where do you live? In a trust house or something?
Come on.
I'd say, watch my finger. And I'd wave it about in front of his eyes and I'd stare at him.
You've got me going
know
now,
what?
you know.
You'd be the only girl in the world with a bloodshot finger.
Thank you, team. Thank you very much. And thank you, Julie Robinson. And just before we ask our next guest to come in, may I just say that in case you wondered why it was that Julie Robinson, who's never had anything to do with show business in her life before, this is her very first occasion, why she spoke so clearly, so well, and wasn't frightened of these comics. She is, in fact, the daughter of one of our occasional panellists, Cardi Robinson, who's in the audience. All right, team. Well, now it's time to meet our special guest, a singer, actor, and comedian who's stolen a large number of radio and television shows from a large number of comics. It's Benny Lee. Welcome to the program. What's your question, please, Benny?
Does the team think that the best pop songs were written before the word pop was invented?
Does the team think that the best pop songs were invented before the word pop was invented?
Well, I would say it all depends when the word pop was invented.
That's right, Dickie.
Well, there was
I mean, after all,
Pop Goes the Weasel.
Yes, I was thinking of that.
Now, wait a minute. Let's have Dickie Murdock.
This is a very early pop song, and it concerned a lady who had a lollipop shop in Poplar. And as far as I remember, if my memory serves me right, it went something like this.
Oh, dear.
Pop, pop, poppity pop, let's pop into the lollipop shop. The population round about, they all pop in and they all pop out. Pop is the name of the girl inside who serves the ginger pop. So pop in and see one poppy one day in the popular lollipop shop. The pop, pop, pop.
It's a hit. Team, having heard that, could I ask you whether you vote that a hit or a miss?
I think this whole question has been cunningly brought in by Benny Lee to plug his sister Annabelle and his brother Robert E., on whom most people have been shuffling along for the last 40 years. They play a lot of stuff that I don't get at all. Now, I know they've got to make way for the so-called younger generation, but the songs don't tell any story. They don't live.
As a matter of fact, you're absolutely wrong. If you listen to the stories of the songs today, they not only tell them, but they're filthy as well. Right? Some of the lyrics that have been written today are sheer pornography.
Tommy Trinder, your big moment has come, Tommy.
Yes, well, I mean, the word pop is abbreviation of popular songs.
That's clever.
Oh, good gracious, is it?
That's clever.
I worked that out.
I never knew that.
Did you really? No. Don't talk with your mouth full.
Well, take my cigar and my teeth out.
Yeah.
Tommy Trinder.
I'm still here.
Yeah, I know.
Well, anyway, there's always been popular songs. I remember the first one.
You're going to say Champagne Charlie and I'll shoot you.
I was going to sing that one that you did when you made your debut.
What? The debut?
The Boers have got my daddy. You remember?
And now they've got the panel.
All right, team, hang on a minute. Oh, wait a minute, Dickie Murdock.
I insist on getting this in because
You
seeing
should.
Benny Lee there, he is responsible for one of the best stories that I've dined out on for years. And I tell this about a dance band in Glasgow, and somebody came up and said, would you play No No Nanette? And I'm going to ask Benny to carry on from there.
Right, Benny, carry on from there.
Yeah, this chap had a band at a cafe in Largs, actually. It's a true story. And some girls used to come in every day and buy lemonade and think they owned the place. And one day, one of them came up and pulled his fellow's coat and said, play No No Nanette. So he said, oh, we don't know it. And she said, do you know No 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 Nanette? And I'm sorry, I spoke. No. Getting back to the subject in hand, but do you think the best pop songs were written before pop was invented? What kind of songs does the team sing when they're at home, say, in the bath?
Well, any song that needs a good plug. I sing Coming to the Garden, Maud.
As he so often does.
And now he's having a bath in the garden, under the hose.
I'm thinking of Maud.
Do you know one of the ones that springs to my mind? It's the opening phrase of a song that makes you want to sing it. You're lying there in the bath and you suddenly think, "Some ching an evening," and you're away with it.
Jimmy,
Jimmy's been at the Purple Arts.
Jimmy's let me down very badly because I should have thought that the number one song for you in the bath would have been I'm forever blowing bubbles. Because for many years that's been his signature tune, which shows how young our audience are tonight.
Of course. Dickie Murdock.
Well, I was walking along when I was doing my Christmas shopping.
That's a good title for a song.
That's a good
I was walking along while I was doing my Christmas shopping.
Dickie Murdock.
And in the window of this shop...
And in the window of this shop was a lollipop, pop, pop, pop.
Come on, Dickie Murdock.
I'm just waiting for it to simmer down. And in the window of this shop was a beautiful little porcelain poodle, you see.
Porcelain poodle?
Porcelain poodle. And I wanted to buy this, and I thought, oh, it'll obviously be far too expensive for me. Anyhow, I thought, well, I'll go in and ask the price. So I went in, and I said to the gentleman in the shop,
how much is that dog in the window?
Thank you, team, and thank you very much indeed, Benny Lee. Thank you. And now we say hello to Miss Greta White. Hello, Greta. What's your question, please?
What is the team's favourite culinary dish, and have they ever been embarrassed by it?
What is the team's favourite culinary dish, and have they ever been embarrassed by it?
I'll tell you the
oh,
name
yes,
of my...
I have a favourite dish and have been embarrassed by it. Butter beans.
Actually, you know, there are wonderful dishes for bachelors.
Aren't there?
Yes.
Greta?
Scotch pheasant, black pudding with a feather stuck in it.
I say, you have your dinner and clean your pipe. That's the lady that got my blood transfusion. Lionel Merton told me for bachelors, a marvellous dish. You get a thin piece of veal. You can buy at any ironmonger's. You get a casserole. The wife's not wearing it. Casserole dish, you place this piece of veal in it, some butter. You chop up some chives, and you put in some anything you like, tomato, mushroom stuff, little bits of strips of bacon. You put the whole thing in with plenty of butter.
Then you go out to the pub for a pint.
I know the whole thing is you leave it in there for about an hour and a half.
Then you open a tin of beans.
No, you don't.
Come on, Ted, what do you do with
You
it?
take the whole casserole dish out of the oven. As Jimmy says, you can go down to the pub and have a couple of pints. Great. You come back, it's all done. You eat it out of the dish, and there's no washing up.
What is your favourite dish, Miss White? And have you ever been embarrassed by it?
I haven't got a favourite dish, but I've certainly got a dish I've been embarrassed by.
Tell us.
Inasmuch I once thought I'd have some spaghetti. And they put it in front of me, and for the life of me, I didn't know how to eat it.
Oh, yes.
So I thought, well, I'd better watch a few people round me. And I saw them twiddling with a spoon and a fork. But I afraid I didn't really do very well, and I didn't get much spaghetti.
Mrs. White, what did you do with your spaghetti?
Don't be so rude.
Obviously, she took it home and knitted it.
She's the only lady with a spaghetti vest in the business.
All right, team. You mentioned, I think, Ted, you mentioned being a bachelor or something.
I didn't say I was a bachelor.
He was talking about his father.
All right, team, if you were at home in a flat and perhaps the wife is away, what meal would you cook for yourselves?
I would start off with turtle soup.
Burn to a Trinder.
You've never seen a turtle.
I have. I keep them at home, little ones. With sherry.
Of course.
Why don't you dry up?
Dry sherry, very good, ladies and gentlemen, very good. I'm with you, Tom.
Bless you, Ted. We'll get the dinner out the oven, we'll eat.
Come on, let's have the menu.
This is only one dish, Tommy.
With only one dish?
Yeah,
He's
only
having
one.
a meal. He's entitled to go through the card.
Yeah.
No, he's not. We haven't got time to go through a full six-course...
one dish.
One
Oh,
dish.
I'll have a tin of vegetable soup. and have
Thank
a
you.
lot.
Dickie Murdock.
Well, the only time I've ever been embarrassed by a dish was when my mother made a rice pudding. And it wasn't enough to go round, you see.
So you bought a fan?
My father...
Come on, Dickie, try again.
Well, I was just going to say, he threw it in the electric
Oh,
kettle.
Dickie, I'm sorry.
Thank you, team. Thank you very much indeed, Mrs. Greta White. And that, I'm sorry to say, brings us to the end of this edition of Does the Team Think? We'd like to thank all those who asked the questions, particularly our special guest, Benny Lee, and, of course, our team of thinkers, Richard Murdock, Tommy Trinder, Ted Ray, and Professor Jimmy Edwards. This is McDonald Hobley saying goodbye to you all. Goodbye.
Does the Team Think was presented by the BBC.